What's your story of seeing somebody's mental state degrade? When mom was 14, she came home from school one day to find her mom laying in bed. Dinner was started, but her mom was in bed. Lay beside me, wrap your arms around me. She held her mom, their hands clenched tight, as she passed away. Then she got up, sent her little brother to get daddy in the field. She finished preparing supper. Those kids had to have something to eat. A few years later, her baby sister was killed in an accident. The local preacher gave her a ride to church, and took advantage of the opportunity. He forced himself onto her and gave her permanent psychological damage. The local madam made money available for her to go to college. An act of kindness. She always said her oldest brother and her dad gave her the money for school. They were poor dirt farmers. I didn't tell her. Years later, when I discovered where they got the funds, she got pregnant, on a day when that was not done. So they got married, had 2 more, started careers. Then her husband got cancer, and passed away, in her arms as she held his hand. She was a 28-year-old widow with 3 kids. She remarried a guy she thought was a dreamer. They moved away from family support group to a remote area. He wasn't as much a dreamer as a lunatic, but she loved him. So she stood by as he treated her kids horribly. He was so harsh with her kids. They had another one. They moved all over the world. Then he had his life taken in a car accident. She remarried a 3rd time. By this time I was an adult. She ended up raising 4 of her own and 3 of his. Mom could cook a fancy meal for a bunch of strangers on short notice. She could design and build a house. She was an amazing nurse. She was the favorite aunt. She was a charming travel partner with her 3rd husband. She drove a hard bargain, was an incredible seamstress, and when all the kids were gone away, moved out of the house, she could relax. She finally lost it. Made no sense. Saw men in trees watching her through the windows. Paid private investigators to look for listening devices under the house, in the walls. She started driving. Drove her car all over the country with her big dog. Went to visit neighbors she had last seen 40 years before. Drove to corners of the country propelled by severe paranoia. Slept in her car. Kept coffee cans to pee in. A strange lady called me. Said that mom was with her, obviously lost. Mom taught her how to bake bread. She had tricked mom into getting enough information to find me and call me and let me know where she was. Then mom drove off. One day she showed up at my house. We sat down to talk. She asked to use the restroom. She took a while. I went to check on her just in time to see her car driving away. 8 years later mom lived on the road, bouncing around the country. She would settle in somewhere because she liked the flowers or because her dog seemed to like that stretch of road. I know of 2 houses she somehow bought during that time. One just sat empty. One night at 2 a.m. my sister got a call. Come get me. Sis got to the intersection and mom's fingers were bleeding from chewing the nails. She tricked her to get in the car and drove to the hospital. Mom was in the psych ward for a long time, and finally settled down, just in time to get the cancer diagnosis and go through that process. One late night in the hospital I asked her, Mom, how did you get through all that? She looked at me. I did my best for you. I was never the best, but I tried so hard. I'm sorry if I let you down. As tears fell from her face. Cancer took its course. I held her as she passed, hands clenched tight.